Welcome back into the second half hour of our class on what is the gospel, and we're still dealing with the issue about regeneration is instantaneous. It is immediately. I'm going to pick up exactly where we left off in our last half hour, and we were talking about Crocodile Dundee. Remember that great theologian, right? So what happened was that Crocodile Dundee, he didn't know precisely when he was born, but did that mean that he did not have a birthday? No, of course not. Now, you see, when I put in those terms, it kind of makes sense, right? We go, oh, yeah, that's right. We can relate to that, right? Now, there was a time when he was unborn, and there was a time when he was born. That's true for all of us. And the change from one status to another happened instantaneously, right? Or nearly so, right? He just didn't know when it happened. And in the same manner, there are a lot of people who don't know when they were born again. You know, you go from being unborn to being born. So your status changes from unborn to being born, but you don't know when that happened, but you become aware that it happened. That's what I keep saying about the new birth is one thing, the new life, or what we call the conversion experience, okay? The new life, when it begins, okay, is another issue. The same way that Crocodile Dundee didn't know, he says, well, sometime in the summer, according to the chief. But he knew he was born, and they had to give him a birthday, an arbitrary birthday. It's the same thing. We all have, all of us were unborn at one point, and that was our status. And then the status changed when we were born, but when did we become aware that we were born? You don't know that until your first birthday. And even your first birthday, all you know is that they have candles and they got cake and there's a party going on. Everybody's having a good time and you're crying because you have no clue what's going on, okay? And then you get to your second birthday and now you become a little bit more aware, right? And you get to your third birthday, right? Okay? By the time you get to your fifth birthday, because you're pretty much dominating everything in the house, you've already got a list of what you want for your birthday. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've become so aware that it happened, but were you aware when it happened? See, some people are aware when they're born again. Some people are not aware when they're born again, but they become aware eventually. So a person can be unaware when or how he became born again. That is true for a lot of people. But it is not important to know when or how you became a Christian. The only thing that matters is whether you are born again. So the churches would tell people all the time, what's your spiritual birthday? And some person looking and go, I don't know. Oh my, you must not be born again. No, we were in the church when we first came into Christianity, okay? And we were told that we had to know our spiritual birthday. And we were told, this is when you were born again. But when did you become aware you were born again? I mean, I walked away having all kinds of questions. What happened? I didn't know I was born again. I was still having all kinds of issues and questions. Same thing. In fact, several weeks back, I don't remember exactly when it was, several weeks back, and on Sunday service, I was preaching in the church, and I said, well, somebody else in the church had the same situation that I had, and it turned out there was another brother in the church, and I went, oh, yeah, that's right, that's who it is, okay? Who became aware later on, oh, that's what happened to me. I was born again. I knew my inner disposition had changed. I knew that. But what did that mean? And the only thing that matters is whether you're born again. This is a genuine either-or situation. You're either spiritually dead or you're spiritually alive to the things of God. You're either spiritually dead or you're spiritually alive. You're either unregenerate or you're regenerate. There is no in-between state. It's like pregnancy. Look, you know what? No one is almost pregnant. I don't even have no clue what that means. No one is almost pregnant. Likewise, no one is almost regenerate. Either you are or you're not. It's that simple. Now, regeneration also, you have to understand something else about this. Okay? So regeneration, which is, we're using the theological term for rebirth or being born again, okay, is, now this is going to be really strange to you, without means. Regeneration is without means. Look, we know that regeneration is instantaneous. But when we say that, regeneration is immediately. I'm saying more than that. I'm saying that when God brings you to spiritual life, He does not use any means apart from Himself to do it. God is the one who sovereignly acts upon you. He doesn't use you or any other means to get you to be born again. Again, when my son was born, he had nothing to do with his birth. But he was there. He didn't go through the annals of eternity sitting on some star in a far, far away galaxy and have a conversation with God. He goes, God, this is the mother I want, this is the father I want. That didn't happen. He had no part of it. He's the end result of it. And I don't understand what is that we don't understand about that. Look, God does not use any means apart from Himself to do it. When a doctor treats you for disease by giving you a prescription, the medicine is the means, okay, he uses to bring about your recovery, right? Right? So you take two pills, whatever it is that they're going to give you, okay? So the doctor is using something, a means, something to get you to the next state, right? To get you to full recovery. That's a means. But the cure for the spiritual deadness, the cure for spiritual regeneration is not administered in doses. You don't take 2 aspirins and call me in the morning thing. You don't go for 10 treatments, okay, and get reborn. See, the great physician heals you immediately. That's exactly what happened to Saul. God just zapped him, if you will. You take the Gospel of Mark. If you take the Gospel of Mark, okay? And if you go to Mark chapter 8, verse 22, okay? Go to Acts chapter 8, verse 22. Just again, I'm trying to provoke you to think this thing through, okay? So in Mark chapter 8, I want you to see this because in the Gospel of Mark, it includes this striking story of a healing Jesus performed. Now, it's an example not of an immediate healing, but it's an example of a healing employed by means. Okay? Now, in order for you to understand without means, I have to explain with means. I think that would be better for you so you can have a contrast, okay? So when we get to Mark chapter 8, Jesus, instead of just instantly healing him, just speaks the word, be thy healed. He uses a means to heal the man. Now, he has his own reasons why he chose to heal this particular person that way. I'm trying to get you to see the issue here at hand. So in Mark chapter 8, this is what happens in verse 22. He says, and they came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to Jesus and implored him to touch him. Now, clearly, what happens here? This blind man had friends who cared about him, right? We know that. And since they had heard about the miraculous activity of Jesus, they determined to take their friend to see Jesus. That's what they did. They wanted to see the blind man benefit from Jesus' supernatural power, right? That's what they wanted to do. So let's pick this story up at verse 22, right? Now look at verse 23. Look what happens. taking the blind man, because Jesus does a very strange thing. I mean, think about it. We read the parables, and we read the stories in the Gospels, and we go, ooh, ah, wow, and we don't ask the silly questions, right? Like, why did he do that? I'm the kind of guy who I read it and I go, why? Maybe I'm one of those, 2-year-old child is always asking why. You want to smack them upside the head, okay? And so I read scripture and I go, why? And this is one of the issues. This is one of the issues that happened with my father. Remember, I told you that he would have me sit down on the floor. Literally, I had to sit on the floor, okay, by the side of his bed. He's laying down. I would read the newspaper out loud to him while he was reading another newspaper, okay? I would have to read history books out loud to him. I would have to read an encyclopedia out loud to him, and I had to read a dictionary out loud, and we would go down through all the words. And then I had to use the word in a sentence. And so I had to do that. Now, my father did not finish his schooling, but my father was a very, very intelligent man, extremely intelligent man. And he would employ his sons, okay, to read to him. Right? And we were riding, he would drive a taxi cab. My father would drive a taxi cab in the city of New York City, right? And we would sit up front because, passengers didn't ride up front in those days, okay? And I would sit in the passenger right-hand side, okay, up front of the cab. And my father would drive people all over the city, and I'd be reading out loud books to him. That's what I would do. Okay? Well, what happened was that we would have all these conversations, and the conversation would start out, and I'd look at my father. I read it, and I say, Pop, why? Now, you have to understand, I'm reading, and I always had to ask questions. Why? And he would ask me why. Why? And he said, well, what did it say? Well, do you remember this? Do you remember that? So what happened was that being raised, okay, I got accustomed to asking the why question. Now, sometimes the why question got me in trouble, especially with my professors at school. Okay? I would drive them nuts about that. Okay? I do that to my son now. I do that now to him. Okay? I just lift above him. But think about this. But so now we're reading in Mark chapter 8. Why would Jesus do what he's about to do? Look at it. Look very carefully. 8:23. Taking the blind man by the hand, Jesus did this. He brought him outside of the village. And after spitting in his eyes, that's what Jesus did. He spit on his eyes and laying his hands on him, he asked him, do you see anything? Man, you spit in my eye, I'm going to knock you down. That's what I'm going to do. I mean, here comes Jesus. Now, Jesus could have just said, be healed, right? Use absolutely no means, no physical means whatsoever, no evidentiary means, nothing that could be seen, nothing that could be witnessed, but that's not what Jesus did. In this case, Jesus literally, he takes spittle, boom, spits in the guy's eye, and then puts his hands over his eyes. Right? Don't tell me that you don't think that's strange. It is. I want you to picture that for a moment. Usually what would happen, someone would come to Jesus and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And when Jesus heard that, he would reply, I will do so, go in peace, right? Isn't that what Jesus typically did? And the person would go away healed, right? But on this occasion, that's not what he did. In other words, Jesus simply healed the person on the spot, right? But in this case, when he takes this particular man, right, Jesus took the man away from the crowd so that his healing would not be a public spectacle, right? Furthermore, Jesus led him by the hand. Think about that. Grace was never more tender than this. The incarnate God taking a blind man by the hand and leading him to a private place for healing. I'm reading this. I remember reading this. I'm going, whoa, this is God. Just think about the great concern that Jesus had for this man's dignity. And I wonder how many times this man had been led around by friends by the hand. He had to trust others to guide him all the time. Think of how helpless he was in those situations. But now he was being led by Jesus Christ, the Son of God, God himself. He had never had a more trustworthy God in his entire life. And then, look at this. Go back to Mark 8:23. Taking the blind man by the hand, let's look at the verse. He brought him out of the village, and after spitting on his eyes and laying hands on him, he asked him, "Do you see anything?" Now, have you ever had somebody to just labor the point? I mean, they just beat this thing down. That's what I'm doing. Okay? I have just labored the point that Jesus bent over backwards to protect this blind man's dignity, and yet as soon as he got him away from watching the crowd, I mean, think about it. I'm reading this. I remember reading this. He protected a man's dignity. He tenderly took him by the hand, took him away from the crowd, led him away where the crowd couldn't see him, and then he turns around and he spits in the eye. He spits him in the eye. I'm reading, I go, what? What did he just do? Look at this. And yet as soon as he got him away from the watching crowd, he spit in his eyes. In our culture, that would be a gesture of insult designed to humiliate somebody. I mean, it's time to pull out a 2x4 baseball bat, right? But obviously, that was not the intent of Jesus. When Jesus spit in his eyes of the blind man, he laid his hands on him. He was communicating with the man via touch because the man could not see. That's what he was doing. He used a means to communicate a truth of something that just happened to him, because when the man opened his eyes, he said, "Oh my." Now just hold that thought there for a moment with me, okay? Now I want to go take you to John, chapter 9. I'm trying to get you to see a point here, okay? And I want you to see in John chapter 9, verse 6 and 7. Now, let's just kind of tie this together. Look. Now, the story is very similar to the account that we find in John chapter 9, which is also speaking about Jesus healing a blind man using saliva. I don't know what the thing was, you know. Jesus liked spitting. I mean, I don't know. I mean, just think about this, you know. You ever see a guy who chews what do you call that? Tobacco, you know, and they just, they had spittoons, right? You know what those were, right? You know, in the old Western movies, okay, and in the bars, okay. And I remember as a kid in the bars, okay, we had them, okay, and they were these big metal buckets in the front of the bar stools, okay, where all the men would sit, okay, and they chew their tobacco drinks and they spit down in there, okay, you know, and I had to be the guy who had to pick them all these things up, okay. I mean, they were nasty things, okay, but just think about it. I don't know, Jesus liked to spit, I guess. Look at this. In John chapter 9, verse 6 and 7, right? Now look at this. When he had said this is Jesus speaking in John chapter 9, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle and applied the clay to his eyes. Right? Look at this. You think I'm making this stuff up? Look at this. I'm the guy, I sit home and I read and I go, whoa. I get these, all these visuals, you know, in my head, right? Look at it. And then he told the guy, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent, right? So he went away and washed and came back seeing. Now, what's the point here? Look at this. On that occasion, However, he didn't spit in the man's eye. Rather, what he did, he mixed the spittle with the dirt to form mud, and then he put some of the mud on the man's eyes in order to heal him. Isn't it true? You just want to, wouldn't it just been easy to say, Jesus, Son of Man, have mercy on me, and Jesus would say, go in peace, be thy healed. That'd have been nice, right? No, but that's not what he did. What was going on in these incidents becomes the question. It's the why question. Why? Was Jesus using home remedies for curing blindness that his mother taught him back in Nazareth? Is that what Jesus was doing? No. There was no special therapeutic power in the spit or in the mud. I mean, even though he's the one who created it all, right? Now, I have to be honest with you. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea why Jesus used these methods, but given the countless healings that Jesus performed without such means, I know that he did not need to use spit or mud to give these men their sight. I know that. I know at least that. Doesn't mean I have an answer. In other words, the power to impart vision, just think about that, was not in the spit or in the mud. In other words, the power was not in the means, even though Jesus used means in both these cases, in Mark chapter 8 and John chapter 9. The efficacy was in the power that God had laid behind the means. What happened was strange. I think we have to agree that it was absolutely strange. Jesus spat in the blind man's eye, laid his hands on him, and asked him, do you see anything? And the man opened his eyes, and he said this. He looked up and said, look at this, in Mark chapter 8, verse 24. Now go back to Mark chapter 8, verse 24. And look what the man says. He says, he looked at him and said, I see men, for I see them like trees walking around. Yeah, that's what he said. I mean, that had to be a marked improvement, you got to admit. I mean, he couldn't see anything before, right? The man could not see anything walking prior to the encounter with Christ, and now he sees trees walking like men, right? This is like one of those, sci-fi movies, right? Think about this. This man had been totally blind. Now at least he saw vague, shadowy forms in motion. Shouldn't the man have been satisfied with this? Now, please allow me to make the point by way of what appears to be a silly illustration, okay, by Dr. R.C. Sproul, right? I mean, he would say things that, and you write them down and you remember them, okay? You read them and you copy them down, but it's a silly illustration, but it makes the point that I want to try to make, okay? This is what he said, quote unquote. He said, I've never seen men who look like trees, but I've seen trees that look like men. There was a large oak tree behind Weigel's grocery store when I was growing up. And every night after dark in the moonlight, I had to take the path through the woods behind the store to get to my home on McClellan Drive. This is him speaking. Every night I would look up and see the silhouette of this massive tree, which looked as if it had 100 hostile arms reaching out to grab me. And I used to run past the tree because it looked like a man, and particularly grotesque and threatening man, but I've never seen a man who looked like a tree. See that? I remember it. Years ago, my son and daughter, we were moving from Iowa, and we had to go to Kansas, and from Kansas down into Oklahoma, and Oklahoma, we crossed over to New Mexico and Arizona, and we came to California. No, we went through Colorado and then California, okay? But we were staying in Kansas, right? And they had this tree outside, okay? And it had it was just a grotesque-looking thing, okay? And my kids were just terrified at looking at this thing, okay? Yeah. Now, I've never seen a man look like a tree, but I sure seen a whole lot of trees that look like men. I mean, this thing was huge. And that's what he's sharing this story. And you go, why would he share such a story? Well, go back to Mark and now look at verse 25, okay? Now, let's just pick this up in verse 25, okay? Look at this. And he gets a second touch now. Why is Jesus doing this? Look at this. In verse 25, Mark chapter 8, then again he laid his hands on his eyes, and he looked intently and was restored and began everything clearly. Why? With the second touch from Jesus, the man's vision was fully restored. Now, what's the point of this story? It's not to teach us about regeneration, right? The point is simply to record for us a historical incident that displayed the power of Christ in healing a man who was suffering from blindness. But I think there are some principles that we can draw here, okay? I think there's a legitimate analogy to the Christian life that can be drawn from this account. In the first place, regeneration is not gradual. We know that. It's instantaneous, it's immediate. It doesn't take 2 touches, of Christ to change a man's heart from stone to flesh. It doesn't do that. It doesn't take 2 touches of the finger of God to bring life out of death. It only takes 1. But have you noticed that when we are reborn, we are spiritually awakened? That's my point that I want to get back to. We're not instantaneously cured of all sin. Hello? Again, rebirth is the beginning, but we still carry around with us the body of death that fights and kicks against the life and the spirit that God has made within us, okay? And spiritually, when we are born again, the best we can hope for initially is to see men like trees walking. See, the new birth in the new life. And that second touch was the process, the means that Jesus used to bring clarity into the life of this individual. And this is exactly what happens with some of us. We are aware instantaneously we're born again, and some of us are not aware instantaneously. We become like that man who now gets that second touch. We go, oh, that's what happened to me. I was born again. You know, back when the I Found a Bumper Sticker fad was at its peak, remember they had that? I found it, and people were driving around and saying, I found it, and people go, found what? I see billboards and bumper stickers, and if I'm with my wife or my son, I'm asking them, going, what does that mean? And sometimes they look at me and they go, I don't know. Well, if they don't know, I'm in real trouble now, okay? Because I have no idea. But they had this bumper sticker. I found it. I remember this, okay? And I remember I reacted with a bit of annoyance when I saw one, because once it was explained to me what it meant, okay? And I understood that what the slogan meant was that people were saying that they had found the pearl of the great price, the most precious commodity in all of the universe. They found Jesus, as if he had been lost. However, when the New Testament talks about seeking after God in the kingdom of God, it's referring to Christians. That's what it's talking about, Christians. The quest for God, seeking after him, starts at rebirth. It's not the unbeliever seeking after God. It's the Christian who's already been born again who now seeks after the things of God. That's what it's talking about. So when you see that bumper sticker say, I found it, it made no sense. As if, whoa, I was, lost and I was finding God. I just couldn't find him because God had kind of got lost on the road too. No. The quest for God, seeking after him, starts at rebirth. When a prospector finds, a nugget of gold, does he stop looking? No. He starts looking with greater vigor than ever, and he looks, right, in the same area where he found the first one. Why? Because he figures that where there's one nugget, there has to be more. It's just the same way when we experience the new life. We want more of the new life. We want to grow. We want to come to the fullness of maturity. The blind man must have been thrilled to see men who look like trees walking around, right? But I can see him with his lips quivering, right? Jesus, as long as you're here, would you give me one more touch? Because, after all, I like what I see. I don't see it all yet, but I've never seen before. So what happened? Jesus touched them again, and everything came into focus right away. Eh? Now he could see men as men walking and trees as trees swaying in the breeze. Now he could distinguish between a man and a tree. Why? Because he saw clearly. That's the point between the new birth and the new life. It's in the seeking of the new life after the new birth you begin to get your vision refocused and see